I woke up to a crash of dishes and Peyton yelling. The clock said 6:30 in the morning. I put on my old robe and rushed to the kitchen. My sister-in-law was already sweeping up the coffee cup pieces. Beverly, please don't walk in here without shoes, she said, sounding annoyed and not even looking at me. You'll get cut, and then we'll have to go to the emergency room. 15 years ago, when my Eugene passed away, I never thought that at 78, I'd feel like a stranger in the house my husband and I bought back in the 80s. It's a house in a quiet Mountain Brook neighborhood that I still clean every week, even with the arthritis in my joints. I foolishly signed it over to my only son 5 years ago just to avoid any issues with inheritance. I just wanted to help, I mumbled, backing away. Thanks, I can handle it, Peyton snapped, throwing the broken pieces in the trash. Better wake up the kids, they'll oversleep again. It was my job to wake up my grandchildren, 11-year-old Hugo and 9-year-old Alwyn, every day. I slowly walked up the stairs, holding onto the railing. I used to run up these stairs without thinking. But now each step took effort. Yogo's room smelled like old socks and had clothes all over the floor. The boy was asleep with his face in his pillow, his hair a mess. Hugo, honey, it's time to get up, I said, gently shaking his shoulder. My grandson mumbled something and didn't open his eyes. 5 more minutes, Grandma, he mumbled. Your mom's already in the kitchen, and if you're late. Just mentioning Peyton got him moving. Hugo sat up quickly, rubbing his eyes. He was scared of his mother's anger more than anything else. Peyton rarely yelled, but her cold frustration was scarier than any shouting. My grandson was already starting to be like his father, afraid of letting her down and not meeting her expectations. A different world waited for me in Alwyn's room. Her clothes were neatly folded on a chair, and her books were on a shelf in alphabetical order. She had inherited her mother's tidiness. It was easier to wake her up. All I had to do was open the door and call her name softly. Good morning, Grandmother, Alwyn said, stretching and getting out of bed right away. What's for breakfast today? I don't know, dear. Your mom is cooking something, I smiled. Get washed up quickly. As I walked back downstairs to the kitchen, I heard the front door slam. Garrett went for his run. Every morning at 6, my son had to run 5 kilometers around the neighborhood. No matter the weather, discipline and routine were his life. At 45, he looked closer to 35, which he was always proud of. In the kitchen, Peyton was putting oatmeal on plates, checking her phone. 225 calories per serving, she mumbled, carefully measuring each spoonful. Beverly, there's your yogurt in the fridge if you want some. The yogurt was a special kind, diet, and non-fat, and not very tasty. It's good for your age, Peyton told the store clerk without asking me. I quietly grabbed my yogurt and sat at the table, trying not to take up too much space. The kitchen was Peyton's pride, shiny surfaces, simple design, and no unnecessary items. 5 years ago, she and Garrett decided to renovate the house I'd lived in for almost 40 years. My old floral curtains were gone, and comfy chairs were replaced with designer ones. Pictures of Eugene were moved from the mantelpiece to a box in the attic. Mom, don't sit in the way, Garrett said as he came back from his run, breathing hard. He kissed Peyton on the cheek and opened the fridge. Where's my protein shake? In the back as usual, Peyton said. She turned off the stove. Are the kids up yet? Yeah, they're washing up, I replied, stirring my yogurt. No one thanked me for waking the kids up. It was just expected, like so many of my other tasks in this house. I remembered Garrett snuggling up to me in the mornings as a child, and Eugene and I making him blueberry pancakes on Sundays. Now Sunday breakfast was just as strict as weekdays. Protein shakes, oatmeal, and measured calories. Family breakfast was strangely silent, only broken by the sound of spoons and Peyton mentioning what everyone had to do that day. Alwyn has choir practice today and needs to be picked up at 4:30. Beverly, can you do it? Sure, I replied. Even though I had a doctor's appointment at 4, I'll have to reschedule and stop by the store for groceries. I'll text the list to your phone, Peyton said, keeping her eyes on her plate. Okay, I agreed again. Garrett quickly finished his drink and got up from the table. I have to go. The meeting is at 8:30. He worked as a middle manager for an insurance company and always talked about his job as if the world depended on it. When he was younger, Garrett had wanted to be an artist, but he chose a more stable career. Sometimes I saw a longing in his eyes when he looked at pictures in magazines or walked past an art gallery. But most of the time, his eyes just showed tiredness and annoyance. After Garrett and the kids left for school, the house became quiet. Peyton worked from home 3 days a week, and today was one of those days. She went to her office, closing the door tightly, and I started my daily routine: dishes, laundry, and cleaning. I used to be the hostess of this house. Now I was a free housekeeper. Peyton and Garrett didn't ask me to do it, but it was understood that since I lived with them, I should be useful. My small pension went to general expenses, and I tried to keep my personal spending low. I looked at myself in the small mirror over the sink. I used to dye my gray hair, but I'd stopped because it was too much trouble and cost too much. Wrinkles covered my face like streams on dry land. My once bright blue eyes had faded to a dull gray. "You're still beautiful, Bev," Eugene had said. Even in the last year of his life. I smiled at the memory and wiped my hands on my apron. My phone beeped with a text from Peyton, a shopping list with 23 items, including a special kind of quinoa that was only sold at the organic store across
town.
I sighed and went to get changed. On the bus, I sat by the window, looking at the familiar streets of Mountain Brook. The town had changed over the years. New buildings and chain stores had replaced the old shops where Eugene and I used to buy fresh bread and spices. Now there were chain coffee shops and boutiques with clothes I couldn't afford. The organic store played soft music, and the young girl at the register looked right through me like I wasn't there. I slowly walked between the shelves, checking the list, trying not to forget anything. Peyton got very annoyed if I bought the wrong kind of flour or yogurt. "Can I help you?" A young man in a store apron asked. "I'm looking for quinoa," I replied, pointing to the list on my phone. "It's right around the corner on the second shelf." He smiled at me with that special smile that people give to very old or very small people, a little condescending and pitying. When I finished shopping, I sat down heavily on the bench at the bus stop. My bags were heavy, my back hurt, and the bus wasn't coming for 15 minutes. My old cell phone rang. It was Peyton. "Beverly, could you stop by the drugstore? I need vitamins, the ones I always take." "But the drugstore is on the other side of the street," I said carefully. "I'd have to transfer buses." "It's important," Peyton said, sounding impatient. "I need them today, and don't forget to pick up Alwyn after choir practice." She hung up before I could reply. Sighing, I changed my route. I didn't get to the pharmacy until 3 o'clock. My back hurt so bad I had to stop every few minutes. Peyton's vitamins were surprisingly expensive, but I couldn't go back without them. Besides, I had to get to school in time to pick up Alwyn. The school was filled with the sounds of children and the smell of chalk. I sat on a bench in the hallway waiting for rehearsal to end. I heard clear children's voices singing a song I didn't know. "Mrs. Thorpe," the music teacher's voice startled me. "Are you here for Alwyn? Rehearsal ended 5 minutes ago." I shuddered and looked at my watch. I had dozed off on the bench and missed the end of rehearsal. Alwyn was standing next to the teacher, holding her backpack and looking at me with disappointment. "I'm sorry, honey," I mumbled, getting up. "I'm a little tired today." "That's all right, grandmother," Alwyn replied politely. But I heard her mother's tone in her voice, the same restrained coolness. On the way home, Alwyn talked about school, the upcoming concert, and her new friend. I listened, half paying attention, thinking about how tired I was. My doctor's appointment had been canceled, and now I had to wait 2 weeks for the next one. Peyton met us at home, working at the kitchen table with her laptop. "You're late," she said, looking at her watch. "Hugo got back from practice half an hour ago." "The bus was late," I lied, not wanting to admit I dozed off at school. "My vitamins?" Peyton held out her hand. I pulled the box from my bag and gave it to her. There was no thank you. Peyton just put the vitamins next to her laptop and went back to work. "What's for dinner?" Alwyn asked, looking in the fridge. "Lasagna," Peyton answered. "Beverly, you'll make it, right?" "The recipe's in that blue folder." It wasn't a question, more of a statement. "Of course I'll make it," I said. I always made dinner on Wednesdays and Fridays when Peyton worked late. The problem was that tonight my hands hurt a lot. The arthritis was worse when it rained. Why don't we order pizza? I suggested carefully. My hands, pizza? Peyton raised her eyebrows. Hugo gets heartburn from their sauce, and I already defrosted the lasagna. But if you can't, I'll make it myself. Her tone made it clear that it would be a big favor. No, I can handle it, I said quickly, heading for the stove. It took almost 2 hours to cook. By the time the lasagna was in the oven, I could barely stand. Garrett got home from work at 7, threw his briefcase on a chair, and went straight to change. No one asked how my day was. No one noticed my sore hands. At dinner, Garrett talked about work, Peyton about a difficult client, and the kids about school. I ate in silence, thinking about washing Hugo's uniform and ironing Garrett's shirts tomorrow. Grandma, you're not listening, Hugo said, bringing me back to reality. I'm sorry, honey. I was thinking. I smiled. What were you saying? I asked if you could help me with my history project this weekend. I need to make a model of a medieval castle. I started to answer, but Peyton cut me off. Hugo, Grandma gets tired doing things like that. Your dad and I will help you, won't we, Garrett? Garrett nodded, looking at his phone. He was always checking it. But I wanted to do it with Grandma, Hugo said. She helped me with the dinosaur last time, and I got an A. I'd love to help, I smiled at my grandson. I have some ideas for the castle. Peyton frowned but didn't say anything. After dinner, I gathered the dishes and started washing them while the others did their own things. The TV was on in the living room. Garrett was watching the news. The kids went to their rooms. Hugo was playing computer games and Alwyn was reading. Peyton was working in the study. When I finished the dishes, I went upstairs to my room, small but cozy. It used to be a guest bedroom, but now it was my only space where I could be myself. It was where I kept Eugene's pictures, old letters, and books I loved. I sat on the bed and took out a photo album. Here was Eugene and me at our wedding, young, happy, and hopeful. Here's little Garrett on his first bicycle. Here's the three of us having a picnic by the lake. We used to be a real family. There was a knock on the door. Grandma? Hugo peeked his head into the room. Can I come in? Sure, honey. I patted the bed. My grandson climbed up beside me and looked at the album. Is that Grandpa? He asked, pointing to the picture of Eugene. Yes, your grandpa when he was 35. He looks like Dad, Hugo said. Very much, I agreed. Only your grandfather smiled more. Hugo turned the pages, asking questions about the people in the pictures. I told him stories from the past, enjoying this moment. Is it true that you used to be a teacher?
He asked. Yes, I smiled.
I taught middle school literature for almost 30 years. And did you like it? Very much. I loved my students and loved the books we studied. Why did you stop? I retired. And then your grandfather got sick, and I had to take care of him. Hugo nodded seriously. Do you like living with us? He asked suddenly. The question surprised me. What could I say to a 10-year-old boy? That I felt unwanted in my own home. That his mother saw me as a burden, that his father, my only son, seemed to have forgotten that I was a person and not just a free helper. Of course, honey, I lied, stroking his head. I love being with you. Peyton's voice from the hallway made us both jump. It's time for bed. What are you doing in Grandma's room? We were looking at pictures, Hugo answered, jumping off the bed. It's late. Peyton stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. It's time for Grandma to rest too. She's had a hard day. There was no concern in her voice, just annoyance. Hugo gave me a quick kiss and ran out of the room. Peyton lingered for a moment, looking at the album in my lap. Garrett wanted me to remind you that you have a doctor's appointment tomorrow, she said. 10 o'clock in the morning. He'll pick you up after the meeting. Thank you, I said quietly, even though the appointment was for another time. But there was no point in arguing. Peyton nodded and closed the door. I was alone in the room that used to be a guest room in my own house. I carefully put the album back in the knitstand and lay down without turning on the light. In the dark, I whispered, Eugene, if you could see what our family has become. The The ceiling was silent, as it always was in response to my nightly talks. Somewhere in the house, the television was on, doors were slamming, and water was running through the pipes. Life went on around me, but not with me. I lay in the dark, remembering how I used to be needed, important, and loved. Now I was just a shadow, an old woman tolerated out of duty, a stranger in my own home. I apologize for going over the limit. Let me recalculate and write a chapter between 9,000, 1,000 characters. The morning started with a loud conversation in the kitchen. I was still in bed when I heard the excited voices of Peyton and Garrett. They rarely spoke with such enthusiasm, and my curiosity overrode my desire to nap a little longer. Putting on my robe, I went downstairs. Garrett and Peyton were sitting at a table with a laptop and cups of coffee, so engrossed in conversation that they hadn't even noticed my arrival. I think Pine Terrace is the perfect place, Peyton said, showing me something on the screen. They have a platinum anniversary package just for events like this. It looks good. Garrett nodded, but the price, 20 years of marriage, deserves a special celebration. Peyton put her hand on his shoulder. Besides, we can afford it after your promotion. I coughed delicately, and they both turned to me. Good morning. I smiled, celebrating something. Oh, Mom. Garrett leaned back in his chair. We're just picking a place to celebrate our anniversary. It'll be 20 years next month. 20 years, I shook my hands. How quickly time flies. I remember when you guys met at that corporate event. Yeah, Peyton interrupted me with a strange smile. We're thinking of having a small reception for close friends and co-workers. Nothing fancy, just 50 people. 50 people didn't sound like a small reception to me, but I kept my mouth shut. In the 20 years they'd been together, Garrett and Peyton had drifted away from a lot of old friends, but they'd grown a lot of business acquaintances and co-workers I barely knew by name. That's a great idea. I walked over to the coffee maker. Is there anything I can do to help with the preparations? Peyton and Garrett exchanged quick glances. Actually, Garrett began slowly, we were thinking of hiring an event planner. Peyton has too much work to do, but I could do the invitations or the decorations. I offered, pouring myself a cup of coffee after all. I organized a lot of school events when I taught. Thanks, Beverly. Peyton closed her laptop. But this is different. Modern techniques require a certain approach. We want everything to be classy and elegant. Her words sounded like I was suggesting we decorate the room with paper garlands and balloons. I turned my back to the window to hide my offense. Of course. I understand. Garrett looked at his watch and jumped up. I have to go. The meeting's at 9 o'clock. He kissed Peyton, nodded at me, and ran out of the kitchen. I was alone with my sister-in-law, who was already engrossed in her phone, going through her email, taking a sip of coffee. I decided to give it another try. For Eugene and I's 20-year anniversary, we had a picnic by the lake. Nothing extravagant, but it was such a heartwarming day. Peyton looked up from the phone with an expression of polite patience. Very nice, Beverly, but times have changed. It's customary to celebrate such events differently. She stood up, picking up the cups from the table. You don't have to worry about organizing. Just come and enjoy the festivities. With these words, she left for her home office, leaving me alone with an unfinished coffee and a feeling of being unwanted. The next few days turned into an endless stream of anniversary talk. Every night, Garrett and Peyton discussed the menu, the decor, the guest list, and each other's gifts. I tried not to interfere, but sometimes I couldn't help but comment. Maybe instead of steaks, we should offer a choice between fish and meat, I cautiously remarked when they were discussing the menu. Some people have stomach problems and heavy meat, Mom. Garrett sighed. Pine Terrace has a Michelin-starred chef. He knows what he's doing. Plus, Peyton added, we'll have a separate vegetarian menu for those who prefer plant-based food. I was just thinking. I started, but Peyton was already discussing the wine list with Garrett. A few days later, I caught Peyton looking at the sample invitations. The colorful gold-embossed cards were spread out on the kitchen table. They're beautiful. I sat down next to her. When Garrett was little, I used to make his birthday invitations by hand. Each one was special. Really? Peyton raised an eyebrow, still looking at the samples. That's nice, but we need something a little more professional. I understand, I nodded, but maybe we could do something special for our closest friends, personalized. Ton finally pulled away from the cards and looked at me with ill-concealed irritation. Beverly, we have 54 guests, and all of them will receive the same high-quality invitations from a professional designer. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but please let me handle the organization. As I see fit her tone left no room for objection. I quietly apologized and went to my room feeling like a told-off schoolgirl. That same night, I overheard Peyton complaining to Garrett. She's always meddling with outdated ideas, she said in a muffled voice. Homemade invitations, picnics by the lake. It's not a kid's birthday party, Mom just wants to help, Garrett replied, but there was no real defense in his voice. She's from a different generation, I understand. But it's starting to get on my nerves. Can't she see that her advice is inappropriate? I quietly backed away from the living room door where they were talking and went up to my room. From a different generation, the words hurt more than the overt rudeness. It was as if my age made me unnecessary, unable to understand the modern world. The next morning at breakfast, Peyton announced that she'd invited the event organizer to tea to discuss the details. Miss Ainsworth is coming at 2. She announced she was organizing an anniversary party for Margaret from my office, and it was just perfect. I was just about to bake a blueberry pie. I said I could offer it for tea. Peyton wrinkled her nose. Actually, Melanie favors a gluten-free diet. I've already ordered matching brownies from that new pastry shop on Oak Street. Oh, I lowered my gaze to my oatmeal. Then I'll just clean up the living room before she gets here. Don't worry. Peyton finished her coffee. I've called a cleaning service for the morning. They'll do everything professionally. Every word she said sounded like a reminder of my uselessness. I couldn't help organize or bake a pie or even clean the house I'd once kept spotlessly clean for years. Melanie Ainsworth was a slender woman of about 35 with perfectly styled brown hair and a suit that must have cost as much as my monthly pension. She entered the house with the confidence of someone accustomed to command and immediately charmed Peyton with her ideas. I see an elegant silver and blue color scheme, she said, laying out fabric swatches and photographs on the coffee table. 20 years is a platinum anniversary, so we can play up the theme. It's perfect, Peyton marveled. I sat in the corner of the living room, feeling invisible. No one had introduced me to the organizer, and I didn't dare interfere with their lively conversation. How about a photo? Melanie suggested we could create an elegant nook for memorable shots, maybe with family photos from different years. Oh, I love that idea. Peyton brightened up. We have some wonderful pictures from our wedding honeymoon, the birth of our children. I have some old pictures of Garrett as a kid, I ventured, and your silver-framed wedding picture that you gave me. Peyton turned to me as if she'd just noticed my presence. Thank you, Beverly, but we'll probably go with the more modern photographs. Professional, sure. I clasped my hands in my lap. I was just thinking, speaking of photos, Melanie interrupted, I'd recommend a professional photo shoot for the whole family before the event. These pictures can be shown on the screens during the reception. That's a brilliant idea. Peyton clapped her hands together. Garrett will be thrilled. He always says we don't have enough family portraits. I rose silently and went into the kitchen to put the kettle on. Their voices followed me, discussing the details of the photo shoot, the outfits, the locations. No one noticed me leaving in the evening. When Garrett returned from work, I heard Peyton complaining to him about me. She kept interrupting Melanie and me with her old-fashioned ideas. She said, "Honey, jars, Garrett. Can you believe this? We're not at a farmer's market. What do you want me to do?" Garrett's voice sounded tired. Stop her from talking. Just talk to her. Explain that we want to organize a modern, classy event, that her advice is inappropriate. Okay, I'll talk Garrett's side, but he never found the time for that conversation. Instead, in the days that followed, he and Peyton simply stopped discussing the anniversary preparations in my presence. I'd catch snippets of their conversations, see them leaning over their laptops looking at something, but as soon as I entered the room, the topic changed. One morning, about 2 weeks before the celebration, I went down to the kitchen and found a stack of glossy invitations on the table. They were elegant silver and blue, embossed and calligraphed. I picked one up, carefully admiring the quality of the paper. "What are you doing?" Tun's sharp voice made me flinch. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, eyeing me suspiciously. "Just looking." I quickly put the invitation back. "They're really pretty, thank you." Her voice softened, but only slightly. I was just about to sign them the next day. Peyton pulled me aside as the kids left to get ready for school. "Beverly," she began in a low voice, "I wanted to talk to you about the photo shoot. It's scheduled for next Saturday at Riverview Park." "Yeah, I heard." I nodded. "What time do I need to be ready?" Peyton hesitated, fiddling with the bracelet on her wrist. "Actually, we were thinking of doing 2 sets of pictures, one with just us and the kids for the press wall at the reception, and one with the extended family, including you. I was slow to realize the meaning of her words. I wasn't to be seen in the official photos that would be shown to the guests. I understand, I replied quietly, though I felt a twinge of resentment inside. It's nothing personal. Peyton hastened to add, it's just that the concept of the event needs a certain visuals. You understand, don't you? Know, I didn't understand how anyone could be ashamed of their own mother or mother-in-law enough to exclude her from family photos. I didn't understand how my son could agree to that, but I nodded because there was no point in arguing. Sure, I said, turning away to hide my trembling lips. I'll come back later when you're done with the main shoot. Great, Peyton visibly relaxed. I'll let you know the exact time. The day before the photo shoot, Garrett unexpectedly stopped by my room, where I was sitting going through old photos. Mom, he shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. Peyton said she talk to you about the shoot tomorrow. Yeah, I looked at him straight on. It's okay, Garrett, I realize. I don't fit into your concept. He frowned. It's not that, it's just that Peyton wants everything to be perfect. It's a big day for us, and I'm the obstacle to perfection. The words came out before I could stop them. Garrett sighed and ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he'd inherited from his father. You know, I didn't just. Please don't make this harder than it has to be, and don't say anything in front of the kids. They'll be upset if they realize you're hurt. He didn't deny that I was a liability. He just asked me to be comfortable, to be quiet, not to cause trouble. I never intentionally upset children, I replied quietly, and you should know that. Garrett nodded, clearly relieved that the conversation was shorter than he'd expected. Thank you, Mom. I'm sorry about all this. He didn't specify exactly what he was apologizing for excluding me from the pictures, for letting Peyton call the shots, or for the general neglect I felt more and more every day. But it was the first apology in a long time, and I accepted it gratefully. It's okay, I smiled at him. I'll be ready tomorrow. The tension in the house was building as the date of the celebration approached. Peyton was getting more and more irritable, nagging over little things, often raising her voice at the kids. Garrett spent more time at work, obviously avoiding the home atmosphere. I tried to remain inconspicuous, performing my duties quietly and efficiently. The evening before the photo shoot, when the kids were already asleep, I overheard another argument between Peyton and Garrett. I'm just saying, it seems weird. Garrett said, she is my mother after all, and I just want us to look like the perfect family in the guest photos. Peyton cut Peyton off. I've put too much into organizing this event to have it ruined by bad pictures. Unfortunate, because my mother would be in them. Garrett's voice sounded strained. Don't twist it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Beverly, she doesn't look like. Peyton paused, searching for words. I mean, have you seen the way she dresses and those old-fashioned hairstyles? That's why we bought her a new dress, Garrett reminded her, and we can suggest a salon. It's not just the clothes, Peyton. Everything about her screams old age, outdated attitudes. It's like she's from another era. I don't want our business partners to see that. This Garrett's voice trembled, or her. There was silence. I leaned against the wall in the hallway, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. They were discussing me, like some inconvenient thing that couldn't be gotten rid of, but could at least be hidden away. Don't be dramatic, Peyton finally said. I'm not saying she shouldn't be at the party, just not in all the pictures, not in the ones that everyone will see. Okay, Garrett gave in, but we'll do both shoots respectfully. Okay, I don't want her to feel excluded. Peyton mumbled something back, but I wasn't listening, quietly trying not to squeak the floorboards. I went up to my room and closed the door in the dark. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring out the window at Mountain Brook, at night. Old age, outdated attitudes from another era, as if they were crimes for which I was being punished by exclusion from my own family's life, as if the years I had lived made me less worthy of love and respect, not more. Tomorrow I will smile for the camera when they let me. I will wear the dress they choose and the hairstyle they deem acceptable. I will play the role of the obedient grandmother, having no opinion of my own, not interfering with their perfect picture. But something inside had snapped, something that could no longer be fixed with a new dress or a stylish hairstyle. The tension in the house became physically palpable, like a heavy blanket that made it hard to breathe, and I saw no way to change it. I sincerely apologize for going over the limit. I'll be strictly within 1,000 characters. I woke up before sunrise, as the light barely peeked through the curtains. It was the day of the family photo shoot at Riverview Park. Despite overhearing the argument yesterday, I decided to do my best to look my best. If I was only going to be in the secondary photos, I'd still make an effort. First, I got out the new dress Peyton and Garrett bought me. It hung in the closet in a protective cover from an expensive store. I carefully unzipped it and took out the dress, navy blue with long sleeves and a simple neckline. The dress was simple, but the fabric felt high quality. I put it on the bed and went to the bathroom. I had washed my hair last night and used a moisturizing mask. I planned to style it nicely today. After showering, I looked closely at my face in the mirror. The wrinkles had gotten deeper, especially around my eyes and mouth. I used to wear makeup regularly, but stopped after Eugene passed. What was the point if no one noticed? But today was special. I got an old makeup bag out of the drawer and put its contents on the shelf. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman who had once been pretty and still had some of that left. My blue eyes, despite the wrinkles, still sparkled. My mother always said my eyes were my best feature. Back in the bedroom, I dressed carefully. The dress fit well, though it was a little loose around the waist. I had been losing weight recently. Not from dieting, but from stress. I added a pearl necklace, a gift from Eugene for our 30th anniversary, and a silver bracelet from my mother. Checking the time, I realized I had a while before the photo shoot. The main shoot for Garrett, Peyton, and the kids was at 10 o'clock, and I was told to get there at 11:30. I would take the bus to the park. Since Garrett and Peyton were leaving early, I went down to the kitchen, where everyone was eating breakfast. Alwyn wore a light blue dress with a white sash, and Hugo wore navy pants and a blue shirt. Peyton looked beautiful in a light gray suit that fit her perfectly. Garrett wore a matching gray suit, a blue shirt but no tie. "Good morning," I said. Pouring myself coffee, everyone looked at me, and for a moment the kitchen went quiet. "Wow, Grandma," Hugo said first. "You look great." "Thank you, darling," I smiled, feeling happy. "Mom, you look great," Garrett said. Surprised. Peyton added, "Very elegant." I could see she was surprised and slightly uncomfortable. The dress fit well. Breakfast was unusually pleasant. The kids were excited about the shoot. Peyton was giving them last-minute instructions, and Garrett kept looking at his watch, worried about being late. "Okay, we should go," Peyton said, getting up. "Beverly, you remember when you need to be there. 11:30, I finished for her." "Don't worry, I remember." "The bus will take you almost to the park," Garrett said, leaving the route info next to me. "Get off at Riverview Stop. It's a 5-minute walk from there." When the door closed behind them, I was alone in the house. Silence gave me a rare moment of peace. I slowly finished my coffee, thinking about the day ahead. I started to feel nervous, but I decided not to give in. After all, it was just a photo shoot. What could go wrong? At 10:45, I left for the bus stop. The weather was surprisingly warm and sunny for late September. The sky was clear blue, and a light breeze cooled my face. Perfect weather for a photo shoot. The bus arrived on time, and I sat at the window, watching Mountain Brook go by. Riverview Park was in an upscale area on the north side of the city. It had walkways, a small lake, and a Japanese garden. Popular for wedding and family photos. Getting off the bus, I saw the park signs. The 5-minute walk to the entrance was nice, though I was careful to keep my shoes clean. I checked the time. At the gate, 11:20, I was a little early. But better to wait at the park. As I approached the garden, I saw my family. They stood on a bridge over a pond, surrounded by flowers and stones. The photographer, a young woman in jeans and a t-shirt, was giving instructions. An assistant stood nearby with equipment. I stepped aside, not wanting to interrupt. Peyton and Garrett stood close, his arm around her. The kids were in front, Alwyn with perfect hair and Hugo with a serious face he rarely showed at home. They looked like a model family. A few minutes later, Hugo saw me and waved. "Grandma's here," he shouted. Everyone looked at me. "Peyton's." Smile froze on her face. Garrett looked embarrassed. The photographer lowered her camera. I'm early," I said. "I can wait." "No, we're almost done," the photographer smiled. "You must be the grandmother. I'm Sydney," the photographer for the day. Beverly Thorpe. I shook her hand. Nice to meet you. We were supposed to start with you at 11:30, Peyton said, glancing at her watch. There's still time, Sydney said. We can start with the extended family now, then go back to the other shots. How's that? Peyton clearly didn't like the idea, but didn't argue. Sure, she said tightly. Great, Sydney nodded. Beverly. You stand next to Garrett. Kids, in front of Grandma. Peyton, you're on the other side of your husband. I took my place, feeling Garrett tense up. Peyton gave me a quick look to see if I'd ruined the photo. Everybody smile, Sydney said, lifting the camera. Relax. Pretend you're just walking in the park. I tried to smile, even though it wasn't easy. Sydney took a few shots and asked us to change positions. Now, some shots on the bench, she said, pointing to a wooden bench under a cherry blossom tree. Garrett and Peyton in the middle, the kids on either side, and Beverly behind them. We took our places. The sun was in my eyes, so I as QUINTD.EE. Move to the left, Sydney asked. The lighting will be better. I stepped left, but Peyton stood. Up. Wait, she said, strained. I don't think this is working. Sydney looked confused. What's wrong? Peyton walked to the photographer and whispered, glancing at me. I couldn't hear them, but I could tell it was about me. Sydney nodded, then turned back with a smile. Let's try something different, she said. Maybe some shots of Grandma and the grandkids first. For the next 20 minutes, I followed Sydney's instructions, posing with the kids in different places in the park. The kids were happy, especially Hugo, who showed me everything that he found interesting. A rock, a butterfly, a cloud. Taking pictures by a pond, I tripped and almost fell, twisting my foot. I grabbed a willow branch, but it snapped. Oh my God, Peyton exclaimed. Sydney, be careful, there are expensive plants there. The photographer looked worried. Are you okay, Beverly? Yeah, I'm fine. I straightened up. I just tripped. Sorry about the branch. It's okay, it's just a plant, Sydney said. The important thing is you didn't fall. As the last photos were taken, the children hugged me tightly. Hugo whispered, Grandma, I want a copy of these pictures for my room. I smiled, heart full. You'll have one, sweetheart. I promise. Back at the house that evening, Garrett knocked softly on my bedroom door. Mom, I saw how you handled everything today, he said. You look the proud, strong. I'm sorry for how things have been. I guess I forgot how much you've given up for us. I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice. He took my hand and added, I'll talk to Peyton. Things have to change. You deserve better. That night, I sat in my room, the photo of Eugene on the knitstand, the children's laughter echoing in my memory. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like a mother, a grandmother, and most of all, a woman who still mattered.